Hey, welcome back. It's time once again for another update here on Health Talks. As we talk about the most amazing things happening in the field of health, particularly Alzheimer's today, with the man who's at the forefront of it all, Dr. Trinh. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Paul.
Well, we were supposed to have another Alzheimer's expert on this morning, but he forgot.
That's all right. I want to tell you about some new news in the world of Alzheimer's research.
I'm glad you bring that up because I subscribe now to Alzheimer's. It's in my Google feed, and I have seen some wild potential breakthroughs or announcements or interesting things happening. What's happening out there?
Announcements. There's a collaboration between two pharma organizations. One is called Biogen. The other one is called Eisai. And they have just kind of finished up on a phase 3 clinical trial on Alzheimer's called the Clarity study. And this study is actually in our office. We are one of the participants in administering this clinical trial.
Really? Okay.
And so what was neat was just a few weeks ago, they announced some preliminary data from 1,800 participants in this study. There was 1,800 participants. The study was, I guess, close to 2 years or so. This study was a global study. It was an international study. Multiple countries were involved, including the United States, multiple sites, including ours. And so I want to give you the highlights of it. They're going to give us the details of the study at a conference I'm heading to in San Francisco, actually, next month. The conference is called Clinical Trials Alzheimer's Disease Conference, where they'll break down the details of the studies. The highlight of the study is really interesting.
And this is, again, just so we're clear, this is two big pharma companies that conducted this.
Collaborating on a study together. And so what they did was they enrolled patients who had mild Alzheimer's, mild memory loss. And for those who had mild memory loss, they gave a medication called lecanemab, is the medication that was given.
Why do they all have to give them crazy names that I can never remember? Why can't they call it Nitro or Help or Assistance 2 or something?
Yeah, probably because it sounds fancy and they can probably jack up the price or something. Who knows, right? So 1,800 patients participated in this study. There was a treatment arm and a placebo arm. There's a group taking placebo, a group taking the real thing. And it turns out there was two things that kind of stuck out for me, at least. First of all, lecanemab was able to remove the Alzheimer's plaque from the brain.
Wow.
And again, I'll have more details after I go to this conference in November. But lecanemab was capable of removing the Alzheimer's plaque, right? The amyloid plaque we all talk about, the beta amyloid plaque.
It creates a barrier for communication in your brain. It keeps the little brain signals from transmitting.
It disrupts and destroys brain cells, and the brain shrinks over time. The question has always been, is the plaque the chicken or the egg? Is the plaque the cause behind the memory loss and the loss of brain cells, or is the plaque the result of all the different factors that lead up to Alzheimer's, inflammation, toxins, exposure to pollution, and all that?
But as I recall from earlier conversations, this has been kind of the holy grail, because in heart disease, we have a similar kind of plaque, I guess, that builds up, and you take various drugs. You either go in and roto-root it out and wipe and physically scrape out and remove the plaque, or you bypass it if it's too bad and it's too built up, or you take drugs like I take, Lipitor and others, to try and either prevent the buildup of plaque or to reduce it, to break it down and to get rid of that stuff.
So just like having a plaque in your arteries, the reason you want to get rid of that plaque in your artery is because you don't want a heart attack, right? Having a plaque in the artery doesn't guarantee a heart attack, but obviously it's linked to that when the plaque breaks off and goes forward and clogs up your coronary arteries, leading to a heart attack. The plaque of Alzheimer's doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to get Alzheimer's, but it increases, obviously, your risk of it, which is why these pharma companies want to get rid of the plaque in the same way that Lipitor tries to lower your risk for building more plaque. Very analogous. So what we found out after 18 months of participants, the group that took lecanemab, which is given twice a month, once every 2 weeks, the group that took lecanemab, I'll tell you what it doesn't do. It doesn't stop Alzheimer's. It doesn't prevent Alzheimer's in this group because these folks already have mild Alzheimer's as a diagnosis. It's not a prevention.
By removing the plaque, you suddenly don't wake up without a fog.
Right. It doesn't improve your memory, right? It doesn't bring back lost memories. But what it does do, Paul, is really interesting. Compared to the placebo group, it slowed down the rate of memory loss by 27%.
Pretty significant. Okay.
It slowed down the rate of memory loss.
How do they measure that? And there must be functional tests. Can you remember? You read something and can you remember it?
Yep. They do these memory tests over time, right, during the studies. And they can tell based on the memory test that people are losing their memory, right? The scores are going lower and lower and lower and lower over time because these patients have Alzheimer's. So they compared that group, the placebo group, and their memory results to the group that's taken lecanemab and their memory results. And they noticed at the end of 18 months, they noticed a 27% difference in the progression of memory loss. So they didn't reverse memory loss, but they bought time. They bought time for somebody who has mild Alzheimer's to be more independent, to be themselves, to recognize their family member. They bought time is what they did by 27%. Now, obviously, this is not a slam dunk, but what this tells me is that we are slowly improving in what we can achieve with that. Now, the question is, and I'm waiting to find out when I go to CTAD in November in San Francisco, the Clinical Trials Alzheimer's Disease Conference, International Conference. I'm waiting to find out how much time did it buy? Did it buy you weeks or did it buy you months? And I'm also waiting to find out where in the curve did it start to segregate? Did the curve starts to separate at the beginning of the treatment, or did it take 6 months before that memory curve started to separate? Or was it at 18 months? And did the curve continue to separate? If we treated these patients or these participants for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, does it continue to improve after 18 months, or did it plateau?
And if you stop taking it, does the plaque build up back again?
Yeah, does the gap go down, right, if you stop taking it? So these are all questions we all have, which is very interesting. And I'm looking forward to digging in on the data.
Has there been anything like this before? Because if there has, I don't recall it. But again, bad pun to talk about Alzheimer's. Maybe I just don't remember it.
Yeah, well, if you remember last year, aducanumab was approved.
That was the one I was trying to recall, right?
That's also Biogen medication, but that never took off because, one, they started at $56,000 a year.
Yeah, right there. Say no more. And there was a lot of controversy at the time and afterwards about if this drug
actually worked.
It actually worked.
The reason there was controversy is because they did 2 phase 3 studies, and one of those studies failed to show any benefit. The second study showed a 20% difference between the placebo group and the treatment group, but the difference was 20%, and it wasn't convincing because the other phase 3 did not show any benefit at all. Whereas this study, this is also a Biogen study, by the way, this study showed clear benefits and the data was significant. And not only that, it moved the needle from 20% to 27%.
And do we know what this one will cost? Should it ever be approved?
Well, they have applied for FDA approval. And the FDA, I believe, is going to make a decision in January. So nobody knows if the FDA will approve this or not, but we do know that they'd approve aducanumab.
Let me see if I remember that conversation correctly, because you had somebody important on. You had somebody on from the National Alzheimer's something. I forgot what it was.
Global Alzheimer's Platform Foundation. We have John Dwyer, the president and CEO.
And this is a guy who sat in on those hearings.
He did.
Whatever the hearings that they have to discuss this. If I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, he was in favor of approving this, even though it had limited application and limited success.
He was.
Because
Yes,
there was
absolutely.
nothing else in the arsenal. We'll take
Right.
anything over something. But the reverse, what I read, I think he alluded to, was the fear that if they approve this, doctors will just start prescribing it like candy. I got nothing else to give you, so here. And suddenly it'll bankrupt Medicare. Everybody's writing $56,000 prescriptions, even to people who it may not help or who really probably shouldn't get it because it was specifically targeted some subset.
It will bankrupt Medicare. We looked at the financials. Just one medication will bankrupt Medicare. And so as a result of that, what Medicare did was that they said, we will only pay for this medication if it's part of a clinical trial. So if you're not part of a clinical trial with this medication, it's not covered. So basically, it's not covered by Medicare, at least. I mean, people can pay, I guess, cash, but who's got that money, right? Granted, Biogen did cut the price in half. They did cut the price in half.
Interesting how they always say that. We can't sell it for any less. It costs so much to make and so much to research. Oh, but nobody's going to take it? Well, maybe we can give it to you for half price. That always makes me a little uncomfortable when these pharmas say, oh, it has to be that price. Or except if nobody buys it, then maybe we can cut it in half.
Yeah. Well, I have no comment on that.
But so that was thought to be a breakthrough. As I recall, what's it been, 18 years? Long time since they came up with anything.
2003. 2003 was the last medication that was novel, that was new, which was Namenda. So we've had nothing really significant or new since 2003.
So that was part of the excitement, and something came through, but part of the controversy. And as I recall, walk me through how the FDA works. Is there a group, a panel of scientists that makes a recommendation, yes or no? And that panel said no.
Right. The FDA has these advisory boards that are from the community, physicians and researchers throughout the United States. They make up these advisory boards. And so before the FDA makes a decision, they go to the advisory board first. And the advisory board gives some guidelines, and the advisory board will vote on whether they think this medication should be approved or not before the FDA makes its final decision. And there was actually two different boards that soundly voted for no approval of aducanumab last year. And yet the FDA approved it.
And why? Was it just pressure from the industry? We got to have something, give us something, like your guest was saying. We'll take anything's better than nothing.
It's hard to say why, but I guess there are 5 to 6 million Americans diagnosed with Alzheimer's who could not wait much longer.
Right. So here we had this drug, and on your show, and it was all over the news, people said first drug in 18 years, even though it's got limited success and maybe only works on a limited number of people. On top of it, it only does so much and only for certain people. Even still, first thing we've had in 18 years, big noise, big everything, big price. And you're saying it was kind of a big bust? Nobody raced out and started subscribing it?
Absolutely. Nobody raced out and subscribed it. And Medicare did not truly cover it other than in clinical trials. So that was a big bust, I think. But Biogen now have lecanemab. This is their next medication up. This is the one that now is, has improved it to 27% from 20%.
And without getting too much into the weeds, and talking about chemistry and all this other stuff, is there a different approach, or is this just better lecanemab? Is this a better version?
It's probably a better version. It hits a different area of the amyloid plaque. And so every study that is done, we learn from it and we improve on it. So if lecanemab is doing 27%, right, difference between the placebo group and the treatment group, my guess is the next guy doing this is going to learn from that.
Right. Say, I can make it even a little better.
Make it a little bit better. Kind of like the cell phone, right? Remember the original cell phone?
Big brick.
Big brick. Didn't work well. Very expensive. Same thing, right? Same thing. This is like the big original cell phone aducanumab last year. Didn't work well. Very expensive. Big brick. But now you have lecanemab, which took it from 20% to 27%. And so whatever's in the pipeline, right? This is why I'm hopeful. Whatever in the pipeline learns from these studies.
So I guess for the average person, I can't understand why they can't just go flush this stuff out. Why can't we just detach the plaque and flush it out of your system here like you do with so many other things?
Yeah, because it doesn't sit inside the blood vessel to flush. The plaque, so the plaque for heart disease is inside your blood vessel, right? Clogs your artery. The plaque of Alzheimer's is not sitting inside the blood vessel.
So where is it? It's somewhere in between these synapses, these little...
Yeah, it's in between your brain cells. So you can't truly flush it out, but you can remove it by tagging it with these monoclonal antibodies so that your immune system eradicates it.
I picture it like I'm reading all about these killer drones in Ukraine, these little robots that fly in and kill and just attack something, kamikaze, dive on it and blow themselves up and everything there. Is that what these monoclonal antibodies? Are they sort of like little kamikaze drones?
They tag it. So they don't explode when they hit the plaque, but they tag the plaque. And when they tag the plaque, it lights up for the big guys to come and eat it up. Right, the immune system to flush it out and all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like that. It's a tagger. It's like, I'm going to tag you so that...
And does the body know, once it sees this stuff, does it know how to go get rid of it? Does it have a way to eat up plaque in your brain?
That's why this medication was able to remove plaque.
It tagged it and the body removed it.
Absolutely, the body removes it.
Wow. Absolutely. Now, we don't know what happens if you get rid of the plaque, if Alzheimer's suddenly goes away and the fog is lifted, or whether memories come back. Well,
we do, because we got rid of the plaque with lecanemab. Alzheimer's didn't go away. We just bought more time.
Right. That's what I'm
saying. Bought 27%, right? Slowing down by 27% at 18 months.
So what do you think? I know this is a guess. Everybody's guessing. But is the plaque, the buildup of plaque, the cause? Stop the plaque, stop the disease? Or is it just the result because of all this stuff going on, bad diet, deterioration of the brain, whatever, et cetera, inflammation, all this stuff is then, this is the residue. You can get rid of the residue, but the cause is still there.
So I think...
Here you go. Listen, everybody tune in now. Here we go. Right.
I think we're not going to cure Alzheimer's with a pill or a shot. I think it's a combination of removing the plaque if it's there, because we have seen slowing down of memory loss, right? So we're doing something positive by removing the plaque. We're slowing down memory loss by 27%. So that plaque is contributing to that. Otherwise, we would not have slowed down memory loss at all if the plaque's just the consequence, right, of everything. But obviously, we didn't stop Alzheimer's and we didn't reverse Alzheimer's.
That's what we're looking for. Isn't that what we all want? Give me a pill and it all goes away.
So we're doing these studies now where we're removing plaque before you have any memory loss, while your memory is normal, right? We're doing those studies. So I'll be curious to find out if I can remove the plaque while your memory is still normal,
right?
Then can I prevent you from getting Alzheimer's? That's a really interesting concept, right?
Exactly. And that's what I was getting at, is maybe it isn't something, once you got it, I can't go back. I can slow it down from getting worse, maybe improve it, maybe clean it up a little bit. But once you've been affected, your brain's been affected, it may always be affected. And all we can do is keep it from getting more effective or kind of hold the line, buying more time.
So what we need to do, Paul, is we need to have an entire brain health package that includes plaque removal along with a lifestyle that does not promote more plaque.
Right. I think of it again like in my house. We used to have copper pipes. I don't know what we have now, but the pipes would break down. And eventually you had to go replumb your house here because the pipes were leaking and the pipes didn't work. The water didn't flow through it. And I picture this, whether it's your heart seems easier, your blood vessels, but maybe it's even stuff in between your brain. There is something that causes a deterioration in the functionality. And we all want to say, well, get rid of that thing that's interfering and I'll just clean out the plaque in the pipe and everything will go perfect. Well, no, maybe the pipe itself's breaking down. Maybe the pipe itself has got breaks to it.
There are so many things associated with plaque production that we are already aware of. Exercise, brain exercise, getting enough sleep, right? All those different things. There was a study published a few weeks ago. 70-something thousand participants were involved in this study.
Wow.
70+ thousand participants. I think it's out of Europe, maybe England. And what they did was they gave everyone kind of like a little Fitbit, a little watch that allows you to measure the number of steps you do every day.
Sure.
So that has 70 something thousand people wear these watches to measure the number of steps you did a day. And they followed these folks for 7 years. And when these folks signed up to participate in this study, none of them had Alzheimer's, right? They were all mentally fine. And at the end of 7 years, what they did was they looked to see how many people developed Alzheimer's in the 70 something thousand folks. How many folks developed the new diagnosis of Alzheimer's? And they also looked to see who walked a lot because they were able to measure the number of steps and who didn't walk at all. There were groups that walked 10,000 steps a day on average. There were groups that walked 5,000 steps a day. There were groups that walked 4,000 steps a day. And there were groups that hardly walked at all. And when they compared the group that was walking around 10,000 steps a day to the group that were barely walking at all, and they looked at the diagnosis, the new diagnosis that came out in these 70,000 something people, the group that was walking around 10,000 steps a day had a 50% less risk of Alzheimer's.
Wow.
That's by 50%.
Pretty significant.
That's right. So you're like, wow. And if you walk, you don't have to take a pill. You can just walk. And they also know that the faster you walk, the better the results. And if you couldn't walk 10,000 steps a day, if you only walk 4,000 steps a day, your risk of Alzheimer's were cut by 25%. You can still reduce your risk by 25% by walking 4,000 steps a day.
And isn't that what none of us want to hear, is that really ultimately our health comes down to making healthy choices, exercise, food, sleep, stress. And we keep saying,
we're all looking for a pill.
We're all looking for a pill. I can't slow down. Yeah. I can't walk more. I can't eat less. And I want you to give me something that allows me to live an unhealthy life.
Absolutely. And that's why I don't believe we can stop Alzheimer's with just a pill. Granted, we want to remove the plaque if it's there, but removing the plaque, at least in 2 studies so far, has not stopped Alzheimer's. It slowed down the memory loss, which is great. That's what we want.
Nor did it reverse it, because the assumption is to the layman, if that's what's blocking my memory, take it away. Memory goes back to the way it was. I'm youthful.
Not the case.
Yeah.
And the reason it's not the case is because our brain, the brain of an Alzheimer's patient shrink over time. Every year, the brain gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And when the brain gets smaller, it means we are losing brain cells.
Isn't that what I grew up in the era where we were killing brain cells with what we ingested and what we drank and the drugs we took, and we were actively killing brain cells because I got millions of those. I can kill a few.
Yeah, you have 100 billion brain cells. So we're losing brain cells, which is why those memories aren't coming back, because those brain cells are gone.
Yeah. Once it's gone, you can't recreate brain cells, not at this point in our evolution.
Well, actually,
can we? Like a pig heart, we can stimulate the growth of brain cells again?
Actually, you know what's interesting is we can grow brain cells in the hippocampus, meaning more brain cells can be born in the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is the part of the brain that helps with memory. So we have documented the growth of brain cells in the hippocampus. The question is, what kind of lifestyle do you need to do to grow those brain cells?
Now you got us interested. How do I grow? I've been killing brain cells for too long. How do I regrow brain cells?
So as soon as I get my patent done,
you'll tell us.
Right? I'm just kidding. Yeah, we have shown that we're capable of growing brain cells.
Because you can grow muscle cells, you can grow other things. I can make my muscles get bigger. I can make other things grow in my body. I don't know that I can make my heart regenerate. To summarize, what I think I said this correctly, at least for me. The real answer to so many of these problems, heart disease, brain disease, obesity, diabetes, is a change in lifestyle. And yet we don't want to change our lifestyle. We won't want to sleep more, eat less, exercise more. That's too hard. I can't do it. We want to continue down the same path, knowing that we're going to develop diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, other sorts of things. And then we want you guys to fix it. We want you guys to give us a pill that puts it all right, or that breaks down the bad stuff or regenerates the brain cells that I killed. Why are we always looking for an easy answer when the answer is really easy? Just change the way you live.
Absolutely. But we're fighting a trend. We're fighting a food industry that loves for you to buy all the sugar in their food. We're fighting businesses that make a profit from you being unhealthy.
We're fighting, I hate to say this, but I'm certainly one of them, lazy people who know better, who should walk more, who should eat less sugar, who should, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what we should do. Who doesn't know that eating too much sugar is bad? So it's not really an issue of knowledge. So anytime you want to change behavior, there are two things needed to help motivate someone to change behavior. And knowledge is not enough. The way I look at behavioral change, you need accountability. You need someone to keep you accountable to the change, and you need support.
And I'm going to add one more. You usually need a crisis. You need a problem. Oh, my goodness. If I don't do this, I'm going to die. If I don't do this, something bad's going to happen. Yeah. I reach a certain point and I say, I can't fool around with this anymore here. I've got to change.
Great point. Wow, I didn't think of that. But yes, crisis. But who wants to get to that crisis, right? Oh. It's the lack of support and the lack of accountability that exists today. Information's free, right? You can go on YouTube, anything you want to learn. Not the lack of information. It's really, for behavioral change, it's support, it's accountability, and motivation.
Motivation. And to me, the motivation doesn't come until a crisis happens. Something big has to happen in your life. That's when you change jobs. That's when you change marriage. That's when you change your lifestyle. That's when you change where you live. Something bad happens or is about to happen, and you suddenly wake up and say, I can't live like this anymore.
Yes, absolutely. By the way, I'm launching a new clinic.
Yes, we'll give you a chance to tout that. Tell us what you do again right now. I think everybody knows, but you got so many businesses. I forget how many places, how many businesses you're involved in. 6, 8, 10 of them, 100 of them. I don't know, something like that. But you serve as a medical director for a lot of different businesses.
Yes. Medical directors or chief medical officers and things of that sort. But basically, I don't know if you read lately, especially when we were doing the vaccine clinical trials for COVID, that over 90% of the participants in these clinical trials were Caucasians, were white.
I didn't, but that kind of makes sense that you've said early on, and many I've supported that. It's hard to reach into the immigrant communities. It's hard to reach into African American, Hispanic American, Asian American even. I don't know why they don't have access, live apart in communities. They're afraid to come forward. They don't trust doctors. They speak a different language. They're economically challenged, so they don't have time to think about, I'm just trying to keep going to work or something here.
All of the above. All be the above. And so when we're trying to implement a treatment recommendations, we're actually implementing a treatment recommendation that has been conducted on just one ethnic population. When we don't know for a fact how this medication may affect you based on your ethnicity, right?
And that's an interesting question. So just based on maybe my DNA, my family history or whatever, maybe upon my dietary choices, different communities eat different kinds of things. Asians historically eat more vegetables, and more vegetarians probably because they're Buddhists or whatever, and more Hispanics or other groups like fat food or fried food. Southerners like fried food and stuff. So we have different choices based on how we're brought up. Maybe we have different DNA in our bodies here, and that somehow might affect how the COVID vaccine works.
Absolutely. And we don't know that because we only tested it in one population of group of people. And one of the disparities in clinical trials and research today is the lack of participation among other groups outside of the Caucasian white group.
You don't want just a bunch of old white guys like me making a determination for everything here. Yeah. Right.
Well, we want to make sure that the treatment recommendations are guided by all types of ethnicity groups.
And let me ask you another question. Is there a difference by sexes? Because my perception would be, this is just a wild guess, that men were less likely to participate in clinical trials than women. Is that an assumption of mine wrong? Men, I don't need to take this. I'm too tough. I don't want to do it. Forget it. Nobody's going to jab me. Nobody's going to do anything with me. I'm tough.
It really depends on the specific study, on what the disease is being looked at and things of that sort. So anyway, we're opening an office up in Long Beach for clinical trials with the goal to see if we can reach more minorities communities.
Now, this won't be Irvine clinical trials anymore. This would be what? Long Beach clinical trials?
Yeah, I'm just calling it the Healthy Brain Clinic is what I'm calling it. A generic name, but we will be conducting some clinical trials out of Long Beach pretty soon.
And let me ask you another question. So we talk about barriers to getting other groups to participate. Language is certainly one of them in the Vietnamese community. Many of these are insular communities. They still speak English as a second language. And so how do you reach them? And more so than ever, how do you reach anybody today in a world where the media has fragmented? It used to be you run an ad in the Long Beach Press-Telegram, you reached half the population. You read an ad in the Orange County Register, you reached half the population. There was a significant number of people, I don't care if they're rich or poor, they read the paper, or they watched the news, or they all watched the same KABC news channel. We all gravitated to the same couple places. Now, I don't know what, if you wanted to advertise something tomorrow to me and to my daughter and to somebody in Santa Ana and to somebody in Laguna Woods, I don't know how you'd reach all of us. I don't know what we all watch, if we watch anything.
I just go to where you spend time at. If you're at a community center, a senior center, I go to where you hang out, and that's how I'll reach you. I'll have a conversation wherever you're at.
Because I think that is part of the challenge is how do you communicate? There is no mass media anymore. There are massive numbers of media, internet channels like this, social media channels, still some traditional newspapers and TV and radio stations, and a whole bunch of other crazy ways people are communicating, apps and other things. And yet, I don't know if you wanted to send out a message tomorrow, like what they did with COVID. I think that was part of the problem. How do they reach people when there is no one channel that we're all tuned into?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult. I certainly haven't read the newspaper in I don't know how long. And it used to be where I get the newspaper every day, but everyone's reading the news on their cell phone now.
Right. And then that means where are you getting? You're getting from Google, you're getting from Yahoo. And depending on where you're getting to get a different bend. You're going to get a different flavor. That was the problem with COVID. It's real. It's not real. It's scary. It's not scary. This is the way to solve it. No, that has nothing to do with it. And we got completely contradictory information. And part of that was the confusion among public officials who argued amongst themselves locally here. We're going to have a mask mandate. And the next day they rescinded it. On and on and on, round and round and round. We're chasing each other here. And so we all just end up saying, I don't know what feels right for me. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I won't.
Unfortunately, that's what we see today, Paul. That should be another day for another discussion with that.
Look, when does that happen? And if anybody listening in Long Beach wants to sign up or learn more, how do they find you?
Well, I got to buy some furniture first. Maybe get a desk in there.
So there's actually going to be a building somewhere. There's an office somewhere that you've rented, and you're going to put a sign up, and you're going to start saying, come on in, we're doing clinical trials here.
Absolutely. Not just clinical trials, but brain health care. We want to take care of the brain, not just research.
Well, when you get that going, let's do a piece on that. Let's talk about that because I think that this is two worlds that nobody knows about. Clinical research, we've done other shows, we've done episodes on other shows. And most people, like we do a thing on pancreatic cancer, we do a show about, it's coming up in a couple hours here, or where we have the Pancreatic Cancer Association talks about real life stories of people. And every time they talk about clinical trials, everybody goes, where do I go? How do I find one? I never hear about them. I don't know who's doing them. I know there are some national sites that people can tune in, some other places like that, but I don't think most people are aware of how to even get into a clinical trial. And when they go ask their doctor goes, I don't know.
Absolutely. That's what happened today. So we'll chat some more on that pretty soon, Paul.
Okay. Well, thanks for giving us some updates on some potential breakthroughs and some big news on your end. And we'll look forward to hearing more about any and all of that.
Sounds good, Paul. Thanks so much.
Well, there you have it. More reasons to tune in each and every time to Health Talks right here in Orange County's only community radio station. The one place, maybe the only place, to hear about what's happening in the health community, locally and around the world. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.